Greetings, Dr. Wolfula here to present a very important special audio presentation that your ears cannot dare unlisten to. Does that make sense? Oh, it doesn't matter. Listen to this.
Welcome to someone's favorite movie. I'm coming to you from the Podcheck outside beautiful Bay City, Michigan. My name is Randy, and with me is a heel, like the biggest heel, even bigger than Bruce Campbell is a heel in the movie we're about to cover tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together. It's the one, the only, the mythical, the legendary Tomko.
I'm not such a bad guy. Or am I?
I don't know. Are you or are you not? You're the person Billie Eilish wrote that song about, bad guy.
I am.
I knew it. Only you could reduce some girl into just ominous whispers all the time.
Well, everybody needs a hobby. Mine just happens to suck.
It's not your fault. You are who you are.
Exactly. Don't blame me. Blame God.
Yeah, blame God for crying out loud. Speaking about the bad guy, let's take a digression and say, man, Scott Hall, Razor Ramon. Bad news today, folks.
I was going to say, as of this recording, has he passed away?
No, they took him off life support. So if you don't know, he was a legendary wrestler in the 80s. Well, not the 80s, the 90s and early 2000s. He's a Hall of Famer. He is infamous, really, for his battles with substance abuse, alcoholism. But he seemed to kick all that. And what got him was a fall and surgery that went wrong, a blood clot that traveled the wrong way. And now he's had 3 heart attacks on life support. Last I knew, they took him off life support hours ago, but he was still kicking. So,
yeah, I guess they just wanted to wait for his family to get there before they kind of started the inevitable process.
And it sucks, man. He was always one of my favorites, so that's why I thought I had to bring it up. And his nickname was the bad guy, in case you're wondering why we digress so hard.
Yeah, but, let's face it, you and I are a couple of wrestling marks, and Scott Hall's importance to the industry really can't be overstated, because without him and Kevin Nash going over to WCW, you wouldn't have had the Monday Night Wars.
You wouldn't have the Monday Night Wars. You wouldn't have had the Attitude Era. You might not have Stone Cold Steve Austin or The Rock even.
Probably not, at least not the versions that we got.
Yeah.
His defection was the catalyst for so much change. And you're right. Unfortunately, one of the things that he is mostly known for is his addiction issues. And on one hand, it's kind of sad to see him beat all that and then go out, but not to be too blunt, but this was a guy who should have died several times a long time ago. So the fact that he got, 10 years, if not close to 10 years of healthy living where he was completely coherent, he got to spend time with family and friends, and he made a bit of a comeback. So on the other hand, good for him that he got to go out this way.
Yeah, that's a good point, I suppose.
Because let's face it, everybody had him as ODing, liver failure, drunk driving, something along those lines. And to hear that he died, is going to die as a result of a botched surgery is, I did not see that coming.
One of the best, most popular wrestlers to never win a world heavyweight title because he didn't fucking need it.
Nope.
He got over just fine. Thank you very much.
No, just an absolutely fascinating life. And, he's going to be missed.
Absolutely. His finishing move is still one of my favorites in the world. It's called the Razor's Edge, where he lifts his opponent high above his head. I don't know how you do it. You got to have some strength for this. There's just no two ways about it.
Yeah.
And he slams them to the ground. They land shoulder first. It looks awful. I don't know how people didn't get hurt constantly, but that's why they're professionals.
Makes you wonder why there's such a high rate of opioid abuse in professional wrestlers, doesn't it?
Yeah. Huh. Somebody should do a study about that.
They should.
Yeah. I mean, not to take too hard of a right turn, but I mean, speaking of drug use. No, that's a bad segue. I need to edit that. That's awful. I'm awful. I'm a awful human being, Tomko.
Well, here's a segue for you. He was well known for his partnership with Kevin Nash, who is pridefully from the Motor City, Detroit, Michigan. You know who else hails from that area, don't you?
Ah, the one and only Bruce Campbell.
And a certain Mr. Sam Raimi, director of the movie we're talking about tonight. Tonight,
folks, we're talking about Crimewave, a movie you might not have heard about. I certainly didn't until Tomko brought it up recently.
Mm-hmm. This was a movie that I knew about only by reputation, but I am going to maintain my statement on our previous episode. I think that this might be the most important movie in Sam Raimi's career.
Okay, we'll get to that. I mean, it was directed by Sam Raimi, who you probably know from the very least from the Spider-Man movies, if not the Evil Dead films. He certainly had more to do than that. Lots of great films.
He's got a little movie getting ready to come out pretty soon.
That you're all going to see, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Boy, if that's not a title. I mean, have you seen the trailer for it?
Matter of fact, I saw it for the first time yesterday while I went and saw The Batman.
It looks insane.
It really does. When they first announced Sam Raimi was directing this movie, I was kind of nervous because, let's face it, Marvel movies are not the area for directors that are known to have their own style. And you can't say that Sam Raimi doesn't have style. I was kind of worried that he was going to be kind of pigeonholed in order to make it look and feel like every other Marvel movie that's out there. But based on that trailer, this is clearly going to be a Sam Raimi movie.
I think maybe that they're learning they can loosen the reins a little bit, those Marvel boys. Because let's face it, the movie's going to make money at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, they let Taika Waititi off the reins a little bit. Visually, don't get me wrong, it looks like every other movie. But tonally and personality-wise, that's definitely a Waititi movie.
Mm-hmm.
Guardians of the Galaxies is another example. You all know that. You've all seen these. But also, Tomko.
Oh.
This movie we're covering, Crimewave, was written by the legendary Coen Brothers.
Yes, the pedigree of this movie is kind of staggering when you think about what these guys went on to do with their careers.
Now, I'm not completely sure, but weren't the Coens roommates with Sam Raimi? Didn't they help out on Evil Dead?
Yes, they helped out in the editing process. At one point, I guess they were all squatting together in New York City trying to get Evil Dead, and I think it was called Blood Simple. Was that the Coens' first movie?
Yes. Yep.
Trying to get that distributed. And so they all helped on one another's projects.
Now you got Sam Raimi. You got the Coen brothers. You got the charisma of Bruce Campbell as an actor and producer on this flick. How could you go wrong? I mean, they're fresh off of 4 years of filming, producing, and creating their own imagination, own product of their imagination, The Evil Dead. And I mean, what could go wrong, Tomko? What could go wrong when these creative visionaries go to Hollywood?
Well, I don't know a lot. Again, I know this movie because I read Bruce Campbell's first autobiography. I have watched a couple of documentaries on Sam Raimi. From what I understand, the answer to your question is the Money Men.
Oh, you mean studio interference?
Studio interference.
No
Yes,
way.
sir.
Get out of town.
Which is weird because this looks like it was a relatively low budget movie, and it was back in the day when studios would fund quirky little projects because you never know what's going to hit. You know, it's not like the day where everything's made by committee and focus groups. So why they decided to have an iron grip on this film is kind of beyond me.
Yeah, I don't really get it either. Like, you know who these guys are. At least Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell. I'm not sure Blood Simple was out yet.
Mm-hmm.
But you knew what you were getting into. So why wouldn't you just let them go?
Well, I mean, that'd be kind of like, you know, Tarantino makes this great little indie movie, Reservoir Dogs, decides that he's going to, you know, try to step up his game, and then the Weinsteins just take total control of Pulp Fiction.
Yeah. It would have been...
It's essentially the same situation that this would have been.
Yeah. In his autobiography, which you already mentioned, If Chins Could Kill, Bruce Campbell said that Crimewave, the title was compliments of Embassy Pictures' marketing department, ended up being more like a master's degree in humility. Embassy Pictures, which picked up the production of this movie, was the creation of the legendary Norman Lear, who made just a buttload of money producing TV programs, which you've all seen at one point or another.
Oh, yeah. Whether it's from first runs, syndication, or what Jimmy Kimmel's doing, where he's reshooting certain episodes of Norman Lear's programs. I mean, the biography on that guy is kind of staggering in and of itself.
Yeah. I don't know how to describe this movie quite. I guess when I was watching it, it reminded me of a live action Looney Tune.
I can see that. The way I kind of looked at it was a cross between the Three Stooges and Mad Max Fury Road.
Oh, that's good.
Let's face it, neither one of those properties are known for densely plotted stories. It's all slapstick and chases.
Yeah.
Which, let's face it, that's all Fury Road was. Except just a lot more violent. And that's essentially what this movie is.
Yeah. So this movie starts, it has a framing device. This man is being sentenced to death via the electric chair, and we kind of learn by flashback how he got into this predicament.
Right away, straight out of the gate, I think the structure of this movie doesn't do it any favors.
No, I don't think so either. It's very confusing at first.
I'm still not sure entirely how Victor ended up on death row.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. It's a good way to suck you in, but it doesn't really make sense why he would be on death row to begin with.
No, when you factor in all of the witnesses that were around, the fact that they've got the bodies of the actual killers, spoiler alert, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Basically, the main character, Victor Ajax, was in the wrong place at the wrong time. The owner of the company he worked for, a security company, wanted to knock off his partner. So he hires two exterminators, quote unquote, who act as hitmen, and they're supposed to kill the co-owner of the company And yeah, that's it. And then hilarity ensues because the two guys that go to kill the owner of the company, they're like living cartoon characters with superpowers.
They're deadly but dumb.
So dumb. They're like the Wet Bandits time with the volume turned up to 94.
Yes, that is a very good way to describe them.
They reminded me a lot of the weasels from Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Yes, especially Arthur. I could definitely see that.
Yeah, Arthur is a very lanky, weaselly type. The other guy, what was the other guy's name? I don't even know.
Oh, I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't either. But he's kind of the brute force. And at one point he even he makes a building shake and he grabs the carpet in this room to drag. Well, he drags the entire carpet in the room towards him to get this girl that he's trying to capture. It's really something to see.
Yes, visually, this movie is pretty amazing. You know, especially the chase scene in the hallway where it's framed like this fever dream dance sequence from a 1950s musical.
Yeah, that's an interesting shot. At one point, one of the goons is chasing this woman through an seemingly endless hallway of doors. They're all different colors.
The world's safest hallway, and she's being chased through it by the guy just plowing through the individual doors and walls.
Yeah. And there's all sorts of little gags like that. The world's safest hallway. It's very slapsticky. It's very I keep saying it, but it's very cartoonish.
But it still leaves a little bit of room for subtlety, oddly enough.
Yeah, somehow. And I know that the Coen Brothers kind of distance themselves from this movie.
Mm-hmm. But
I mean, it reminds me a lot of the Ballad of Buster Scruggs. Like the beginning segment of the Ballad of Buster Scruggs is about a cowboy named Buster Scruggs, and he's a cartoon character who basically cannot be killed, and he's Bugs Bunny, basically.
Yeah.
He cannot be killed, and he kills everybody else who crosses him.
Well, I mean, also, they distanced themselves from this movie, but they went back and reused the name Hudsucker for one of their movies.
That's true. Yeah, that's a nice callback.
And I don't think that there's anything in this movie that they should be ashamed about. I just think that it was a very, very steep learning curve where you had these guys who were even lower than indie filmmakers who didn't have any kind of supervision on their last projects, all of a sudden having to learn how to play the game for real. I think that it was just a really good way for them to properly cut their teeth in the industry. And let's face it, without this movie, you wouldn't have Evil Dead 2, which is one of the great horror movies of all time, I would say. So, again, I can't help but appreciate this movie for that. And everything that, you know, the Coens, Bruce Campbell, Sam Raimi took from this movie, they applied it to future projects, and it shows.
Yeah, I think it's kind of amazing that the failure of this movie indirectly led, well, not even indirectly, it directly led to Evil Dead 2 because they were kind of sitting.
They didn't want to do that movie, from what I understand. They only did it out of desperation because their career was pretty much fucked after this movie.
Yeah, they were just sitting there licking their wounds and thinking, what the fuck do we do now?
Mm-hmm.
We just got railroaded out of Hollywood. How can we make this work? How can we make this a career? And we get Evil Dead 2, which is simply amazing.
Yes.
And, I was having a really bad week. Work sucks, I slipped on some ice and scraped my arm all the hell. And then Tom goes like, we got to do this movie. I'm like, oh, great. So I'm having the worst week ever. And then I turned this movie on, Tomko.
Uh-oh.
And it cheered me up. I really enjoyed this. It's a mess, but it's an entertaining, enjoyable mess, I think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think that this movie was probably killed in the editing.
Yeah.
Because the prologue and the epilogue on Death Row, you could tell was just tacked on. I think that if somehow they were able to get their hands on the raw footage and get it cleaned up, I think that there could be a really, really cool movie in there.
I think that the framing device is just clumsy. Although I appreciate the payoff in the end with spoiler. So the would-be love interest goes to save Victor from death row. She somehow had become a nun. So who knows how much time has passed? She wandered the earth and became a nun and then discovers that Victor is still alive and being framed for this murder. Very unclear. So
they said during the radio reports that it had been a couple of weeks since the city was rocked by these crimes.
Oh, okay. All right. That makes sense, though. So they learn that he's going to be executed. They show up to right before midnight when the switch is going to be thrown. And the commissioner and the mayor ask the nuns if they can corroborate that this man is innocent. And they had taken a vow of silence.
Why nobody handed them a pad of paper and a pencil?
Right.
I don't know.
Yes. And the newspaper headline reflects that. Like, what is it? It says something to the effect of
they broke their 40-year vow of silence.
Yeah, but it's more clever than that. Like they, I don't know. I'm ruining it. It's a good gag at the end, though.
As badly as that sequence was tacked on with the death row, part of the movie, I gotta admit, I really got a kick out of the enthusiasm that the prison staff were having toward this execution. Because in every movie where somebody's going to be executed, all of the people there are very solemn, which, let's face it, you kind of should be.
Yeah.
But you just got to know that there's somebody somewhere out there on a death row that really, really enjoys their job.
Right.
And these guys aren't making any bones about it. They love their work.
Yeah.
Even the governor where, he bursts in, you're thinking that he's going to, commute the sentence or pardon him. No, he just wanted to get a good view.
Yeah. The beginning of the movie is a mess. Like the plot is just not clear at all. But once the action starts, it's really enjoyable. It
does not let up.
Yeah. So you have to get through about 10 minutes or so, maybe 15. And then
I don't think it was even that, because to me, it felt like once this movie got going, it just barreled right to the end of the movie.
You're probably right, because it's only 86 minutes long and it goes by in a blink. So
it really, oh yeah. The other thing about this movie that I really, really did enjoy was the fact that they didn't even bother with setting anything up. It's just, it's all visual gags. And if you're in the mood for something lightweight and stupid, but visually really cool, this is a movie that I can't recommend highly enough.
Yeah. You might wonder why Bruce Campbell isn't the lead in this, and it's because they didn't want him to be. The studio said no. No way. They made him an audition, which he didn't expect, and then they didn't want him for the lead. Which kind of blows my mind a little bit. He's got that leading man status, right? He looks like a leading man.
Yes, but look at his resume up to that point.
Well, true. But I mean, what was Reed by me in up to that point?
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that I can understand why the studio would want to have him read, because he'd been in Evil Dead, which was made for like $5, and he'd been on some local soap operas, and that was it. And besides, let's face it, he really, really did a good job as Ronaldo the heel.
Yeah, that's a classic Bruce Campbell performance. And when he was playing that character, I can't imagine him being the lead in this movie, quite honestly.
Yeah, I don't know. I would hope that they maybe would, write it to play to his strengths. But he just plays a smarmy asshole so well in this movie.
Yeah, he's definitely lives up to his nickname, the heel.
Yes. Now, I know that this is practically going to be a catchphrase of mine, but what else is there to say about this movie?
I don't think there's much more you can say, quite honestly.
It's fun. It's sloppy as fuck. I can see why it bombed, but this kind of deserves to be a cult classic that it really isn't.
Yeah.
Because for the longest time, it was hard to even track down a copy of this movie.
Yeah, and like I said, I had never even heard of it. And you would think a movie by Sam Raimi and the Coens at this point, even by Bruce Campbell, has a cult like no other actor. And I didn't even know this existed. Well,
not only that, but let's face it, we're both Michigan guys.
Sure.
You look at this movie, and that's clearly Detroit.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. It's I guess according to Campbell's autobiography, he said that the film was only opened in Kansas and Alaska to meet a minimum to release it on HBO.
Wow.
So, I mean, if you were one of the lucky few to see it in the movie theater, you were actually one of the few.
And chances are you saw it by accident, because I doubt they did a whole lot of advertising.
Yeah. Now, how's a movie supposed to even have a fighting chance when you do shit like that?
Chances are at that point, the studio is just looking to turn it into a tax write-off.
I mean, I could see why a conservative studio would be like, oh, God, what is this? What the hell are we going to do with this? But, I mean, if this was Norman Lear's movie studio, I mean, Norman Lear took chances all the time.
He still does.
I know.
It wasn't that long ago that he decided that he wanted to be on the writing staff of goddamn South Park.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's phenomenal. Holy shit. I love that.
So you'd figure he'd be willing to maybe let the guys turn in a rough cut before they jumped in and took over.
Yeah, I can only imagine that it was his studio and name. Like, he was pretty hands off, I would guess.
Yeah. I'd really like to get my hands on a shooting script of this film to see what sequences they had in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Because that, they had A, B, C, and D in mind.
Yeah.
And what ended up on the screen was B, G, H, and Q.
Yeah.
So I'd really like to see what they had in mind. And the other thing about this movie that really sticks out is, what time period does it take place in?
Yeah, it really seems like it's 1930s, 1940s, like Prohibition era.
With the cadence of their speech.
Yeah.
The fashions. But then you have a 1970s car.
Right.
being driven by a guy who installs video surveillance systems.
Mm-hmm.
So that doesn't make a lot of sense. But on the other hand, it kind of helps this movie from looking too dated.
Yeah, it's kind of timeless in that way, I guess.
Yeah.
I really think that if you pay attention, you can see the Coens' fingerprints all over this movie.
Oh, absolutely.
Because
yes,
even their latest films, like they're filled with this sort of quirky dialogue and sort of weird happenings.
But no, I mean, if you look at a movie like, say, Raising Arizona,
mm-hmm.
and compare it to a lot of the sequences in this movie, the editing, the movement of the camera, the cartoony characters, they all fall in line. You could tell that there's definitely a lineage in place.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the things I like about Coen Brothers movies. It's a phrase in literature, but it applies here. It's magical realism. It's when it's a reflection of real life, but with a twist where anything could be possible.
I like that. I've not heard that phrase, but I think I'm going to have to use that. I'm going to have to sprinkle that into conversations now. Magical realism.
Oh, you'll sound so smart. People will be so impressed.
They'll look at me and go, God, what a pretentious douche. And I'll be like, yes, I am.
I am a learned man. I'm glad you know.
But no, I mean, the blueprints for these guys' movies, it's all right there laid out in the open. I just can't believe that this movie is not more celebrated. This deserves a special commemorative Blu-ray box set with outtakes and commentaries and documentaries. There's stories to be had here.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. I'm hoping at some point that somebody does put this out, like my boys at Vinegar Syndrome or something, because it deserves the full treatment. It really does.
Well, not to mention, I mean, they may have not had the most pleasant time in the moment while making this movie, but in the damn near 40 years since then, I'd like to think that they've kind of had a couple of instances that will make them kind of forget about the bad times.
Sure.
And kind of sit down and at least have a conversation about it, just to document it.
I mean, maybe they were a little cocky, and this definitely was the humbling movie for them.
You know what? If Joel Schumacher can record a director's commentary for Batman and Robin in which he literally apologizes to the audience, they can do this.
I love that. I think there is actually a Blu-ray somewhere or a DVD somewhere that was released a few years ago. I think I read this, and Bruce Campbell was on commentary.
Okay, I would want to track that down. That would be worth the 86 minutes of my time.
Yeah, absolutely, it would be.
Speaking of 86 minutes of your time, did you see the post-credit syndrome?
The what?
The post-credit sequence.
No. I didn't know there was one.
Yes. You remember how the business partner's wife ended up being airlifted to Uruguay?
Yes. Yeah.
They show the package at its final destination just high up in the mountains, and she's in the box going, hello? Hello? Is there anybody there? And the only reason I found out about this was because I had the credits playing in the background while I was fucking around with my phone trying to get Skype to work.
Sure. Man, no, I didn't know that. Like, they're ahead of their time, these guys.
They really are.
They invented the post-credit sequence.
Yep. And again, this movie is not for everybody. I can't imagine Mrs. Tomko sitting down and watching this because she'd be too busy giving me the evil eye.
Well, Pookie, my wife, whom I adore, watched it with me, and she loved it.
Good for her.
Yeah. But she skews a little bit quirky like me, so.
Yes, she does. No, I cannot sing this movie's praises highly enough while also admitting, yeah, this movie's a train wreck.
Yeah, but in a good way.
Yes, this is one of those quintessential beer and a shot movies.
Yeah.
You get home from the bar, you still got your friends hanging out, you want to have a good time, you sit down with a 6-pack and a pint of cheap swill, you'll have a good time.
Yep. This movie's the reason this podcast exists right here. This is a definition of someone's favorite.
Oh, yeah, I guarantee you somebody out there says that this is their favorite movie. Guarantee you.
I could see that. I don't know if you saw the news recently, but here's a callback to an episode we did a while ago at this point.
Oh?
Alamo Drafthouse did a 4K restoration and is touring this movie around. We covered it in the archives. Stunt Rock.
No.
Yes. If there's a draft house near you, they're touring with Stunt Rock.
Oh my God, I would love to see that in a crowd.
Oh yeah, that would be fun to see with a crowd. It's rock and roll. It's stunts. It's Stunt Rock. In 4K, no less.
Oh my God, that is way more than that movie deserves.
Yeah, if you want to hear all about that, we covered it many moons ago. You can hear what it's all about.
Oh my God, I might have to go back and rewatch that movie again just because of the fond memories I have with the wizard rock progressive band.
Right.
That's what stands out in my head for whatever reason.
That's fair.
Oh, that's great.
Well,
now correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't Alamo Drafthouse the same entity that brought Roar to the limelight?
This is true. Yeah, they sure did.
They're doing their God's work down there.
Yeah, they are. They know what the people want.
Yes, they do.
Oh man, tell people where they can find you on that World Wide Web, Tomko.
Well, I can always be heard in reruns of a little show called Jake and Tom Conquer the World, which we use to talk about all kinds of geeky things. If you want to reach out to me, you can find me on Twitter at The Drunken Dork, as well as at Facebook in a little group called Jake and Tom Conquer the Group. Randy, what about you, though? Where can they find you?
You can find me on a podcast called Miserable Retail Slave. It's a big dumb comedy show. I'm on Twitter at mretailslave. There's a Seinfeld podcast. That's a shame. What else? I don't know. Other things. I don't really dink around with that Facebook much, but I probably should.
Yeah. If you're a podcaster, you don't have any choice but to be on social media.
Yeah, it's a. Ugh. I've been on kind of a social media exile for like a year now, and it's been
feels
fine.
Good, doesn't it?
It really does.
Every once in a while, I'll just kind of skim and throw in an occasional comment, but
yeah,
especially these days with everything going on in the world, it's really nice to be away from all that shit.
Yeah. Suicide if you have a podcast, though. Suicide if you have a podcast.
Yes. So what's on the docket next time, sir?
Next time we're covering a movie called Repo Man.
Greatly looking forward to this.
Yep.
It's one of those movies that has always been on my radar. Never actually sat down and watched it.
Yep. At some point, I hope we get to do a very short episode on the newest Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Only so that we can say we did cover all of them
whether we wanted to or not.
Yes,
we did it.
Yes. And after that, Tomko, are you ready for this?
Oh,
a movie called Alligator.
Gee, I wonder what it's about.
It's about a cockatoo.
Oh, I thought it was going to be like those tacky pastel and bright pink polo shirts from the 80s.
Oh man, those are cool. I always thought those men wearing those were like the bomb.
Yeah, them and their loafers and members only jackets. So cool.
Straight up killing it. What were the name of those little gator shirts anyways? I don't even know. I'm sure they had a name.
I'm sure they had a name.
Somebody tell us what the name of the Gator shirts were, so we can buy them and look so cool and outdated.
I need to know what to type into Amazon.
Yeah, that's what we need. Fashion advice, folks.
Yes.
Come back for all that and more next time on someone's favorite movie. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
See ya. Bye.